presentation of 13ABC Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 13ABC's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
I think it's Big Brother overstepping. I don't really think they need to be watching our every move, trying to get, more money out of the taxpayer, And I know they also get people for speeding and everything else. So I think they should be banned. Yeah, I think it's a waste of money. I think that, there's more important crimes they could be spending the money on. Well, I see a lot of people going through red lights. So either people have figured out which ones have the cameras and which ones don't.
Red light and speed cameras, the issue this week with the Ohio House of Representatives bringing forth House Bill 69, talking about banning those cameras that have been put up all across Northwest Ohio and Toledo proper in the last couple of years. 44 total cameras up at different locations around the area, some hot spots, if you will. We're glad to have Lieutenant Jeff Saluski from the Toledo Police Department here with us this afternoon. Lieutenant, thanks for taking the time to sit down with us. You guys get word that the state, after all of this work, after all of this effort to put these cameras in, get them live online, see the results they're bringing in, and now the state comes up and says, a group of representatives come up and say, we want to get rid of these things. What's been the reaction from TPD?
Well, it's very concerning to us. We've had very good success with the cameras. We've seen hard data in which our accidents actually went down over a 10-year period that we looked at from the time the cameras were put in up until the end of 2011. We expanded the system in 2012 to attack some areas that had a high number of complaints and that we were seeing a large number of violations. So, and now that those cameras are in place, we're seeing those violations going down and overall a downward trend in our overall accidents throughout the city. So it's very concerning to us. We feel it's a very good tool for traffic enforcement.
The gentleman we heard from, the Toledoan we heard from at the very beginning of the program, is he the majority or the minority, you think?
I would have to say he's the minority, at least with the people that I talk to. For every person that tells me they don't like the cameras, and for whatever reason, and that's understandable, I probably have 2 or 3 others that say they think they're a great, they're a great idea. And the bottom line is, if you're obeying the traffic laws, and in this case, in the case of the cameras, you're not running a red light and you're not speeding, you're never going to see a citation from one of these cameras.
When we started putting this show together this week, and we asked the city of Toledo, we asked the mayor's office about the legislation going forth in the state, immediately they turn over a letter to us that they sent down to Columbus. And in that letter, the mayor points out, he says, the city of Toledo initiated the program in 2001, and since doing so, he says the city has realized an overall downward trend regarding the number of accidents, as you alluded to, saying reduction rates varied from approximately 2% to 17% for the last 10-year period. Now, do you attribute all of that to what the cameras are doing and just the fact that people know they're there and are driving safer?
I believe that. Just the presence of the camera, it's just like the presence of a police officer on the street. When we're driving as citizens and we see an officer, we tend to think about, what we're doing driving the car. And if that gets people's attention and if that's what causes them to drive safer, obey the traffic laws, then I'm all for it. The cameras are a force multiplier for us. They allow us to put a sentinel there, if you will, 24/7. Not only to enforce the law, but as a reminder to people to think about their driving and to obey those traffic laws.
The cameras have no leeway. And if you're walking on a downtown street and you don't use the crosswalk, chances are an officer may or may not write you a ticket for jaywalking, right?
Correct.
So I guess, is there leeway in these cameras at all?
Yes. Every one of these citations has to be approved by a police officer before they're issued. There's about 6 officers total in the Toledo Police Department, myself included as the project director. And what I tell my officers is when they are reviewing the violations, if they would not issue a ticket on the street if they witnessed that, then to reject the incident. because it is set.
Give me an example. Give me an example.
Right turn on red is the biggest one.
Okay.
Right turn on red, in the state of Ohio, and all of our intersections that have cameras are marked this way, all have the white stop line. The law states that you shall stop at that line first. Then if clear, you can move up, probably have to stop again, make sure that there's no crossing traffic, no one in the crosswalk, then you can make your turn on red. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of times where people will cross that line, and that sets the sensor off, which triggers an incident. But then the officer...
Because of a rolling stop?
Because, it's a rolling stop, or they just go beyond that line where the sensor's set.
Yeah.
The sensor is set exactly as the law reads. But they'll go past that, but then they will make a stop. Mm-hmm. As long as they don't encroach on a pedestrian in the crosswalk, as long as they don't encroach on any crossing traffic that has the right-of-way, they make a safe stop, and then they continue to go. We will more than likely reject that incident. Just as an officer on the street, if he observed that, would not issue a ticket.
Now, the House bill did pass this week. It is going to the Senate, and we have heard a couple of different variations of the Senate could vote on it in the next couple of weeks, or they may take a break, a summer recess, and not vote on it until the fall. In the letter the mayor's office sent down to Columbus, he said, quote, "The photo enforcement program has allowed Toledo to address traffic problems even with historically low police manpower." And he goes on to say using technology, traffic issues can be addressed citywide using fewer officers. The Toledo program has been successful in reducing the number of violations and accidents in most areas. This has been a manpower issue, having these, has it not?
Yes, it has.
And it has helped.
It has helped. We have been running at historically low numbers. You know, a number of years ago, the Toledo Police Traffic Section had upwards of 30 officers assigned. Mm-hmm. One of their main duties was to go out and do traffic enforcement. That's significantly reduced. We currently only have 7 patrol officers that are assigned to the traffic section. We are very limited on the type of enforcement that we can do. Having these cameras, again, allows us to cover these locations 24/7. They're locations that have been identified as problem areas, high number of accidents, high number of violations, complaints, and just from officer observations of seeing violations in those areas.
Yeah.
So by having the cameras there, you know, we can enforce the law, but we can also remind people and hopefully reduce those just by the presence of the camera.
It's hard to believe this weekend we crossed the halfway point of the year, and so far this year you said you've got a figure you guys are looking at as far as the number of violations so far that you guys are targeting, yes?
Yes.
How many is that?
It's over 30,000 citations have been issued already this year.
And you said that number is, you can't tell whether it's higher or lower than years past because you guys just put online another 11 cameras.
Correct. In June of 2012, we installed 11 new photo enforcement cameras. They actually went live. June 29th, I believe the speed camera on the trail was about a month and a half behind that because of some building concerns and getting power and that to it. But those locations were identified as being a high number of violations in areas where we had a large number of accidents, a lot of complaints. Yeah. And when we tested those locations, they were off the charts, to put it quite mildly, of the number of violations that were recorded. So initially we had quite a spike in the number of citations. Those have been falling on a regular basis. And we average now right around 5,000 to not quite 6,000 tickets a month through the photo enforcement.
You talk about the camera on the trail, and I've got some numbers here between January and March of this year. We're looking at 1,600 plus violations there. It does not do a red light violation there, obviously, because there's no intersection. You talked about, before we came out here today, you talked about hot zones around the area that you were just alluding to the fact that there was a lot of watching, there was a lot of homework that went into figuring out where these were going to go. One of those buzz areas, if you will, Alexis and Whitmer, right outside of Whitmer High School. We want to show folks that location. And over that first 3-month period this year, we're looking at 3,300 violations just for speed. There have also been red light violations right there. We went to Washington local schools to talk to the superintendent, Patrick Hickey, and he gave us this statement. I want to show people at home if we can get that up and give them exactly what he said to us. He said, "We have tried unsuccessfully for years to get people to reduce their speed on Alexis with little success." He is a proponent of these, Lieutenant. He said the cameras have been absolutely successful in education and in reducing the speed and red light violations directly next to Whitmer High School and Washington and Jefferson Junior Highs. He said, quote, "I firmly believe that our students and staff are safer since their installation." You talked about the gentleman at the beginning of the show being in the minority. Obviously, Patrick Hickey, if you're saying more people are approving of these, he is in the majority. One of the words he used in that stood out for me was "in the education of the public." What did you take from that?
To me, it means just making people more aware of what they're doing, that they are going through in that particular area, a school zone during those restricted hours. And it's also a very heavily populated residential zone. When that camera went up, we got a number of phone calls on it. I've been out working that area myself, have been stopped by residents, stopped by parents who are dropping their kids off to school, thanking us for putting that camera up there. And we still actually do enforcement in that school zone and still write tickets because people go through that camera, and once they know they're clear of the camera, they step on the gas.
Is that because the camera, they can get out of a zone more or less and it cannot be seen, or?
Well, there's an area with every camera is where the speed is recorded. And once you're past that, and if you figure out once you're past that that you can, increase your speed and it won't record you anymore, a lot of people will do that.
There's another thing about these cameras that I wanted to talk to you about, and that is you guys are not targeting. It's kind of the old mentality when you're out on the highway, and we'll talk to an Ohio State Trooper here in just a second in our next segment, but when you're out there, you can go that 3 or 4 over. You guys have set these, would you call it at a high mark as far as busting those who are violating?
It's a fairly high mark. Our cameras are set administratively at +11. So you have to exceed the speed limit by 11 miles per hour to trigger the camera, which will then issue a citation. That was done for a number of reasons.
And that's across the board?
That's across the board for the photo enforcement, yes.
Okay.
Even though speed limit means just that's the highest speed you're supposed to drive, we are not looking to nickel and dime anybody. We are looking to catch the person that is doing one or two things. They're either purposely speeding, driving at that faster rate, or they're not paying attention to what they're doing. They're distracted in some other way to the point to where they're actually driving that fast.
Yeah, okay. Another one of those hot zones we wanted to show people maybe wondering at home where exactly those buzz areas are. Another one, and this was one of the new cameras, correct me if I'm wrong, Collingwood and Dorr?
That's correct.
That was one of the new ones, one of those 11 that were last added. 2,800 plus. Speed violations there, and of course that's a red light camera as well. Not as many. The speeding, is it of epidemic proportions in these zones, or was this expected?
It was kind of expected. Collingwood and Dorr, and actually that section of Dorr Street between Collingwood and Detroit Avenue, has, as long as I've been on the police department, been an area of which there is a lot of speeding, a lot of exceeding the speed limit. Some people say that the limit is too low in there, and it's my understanding that the Department of Transportation is taking a look at that, may recommend increasing that speed limit, maybe to 35. I've heard 40. I don't know if it'll go that high. Either way, some of the speeds we record in there are 50 or 60 miles an hour at times.
And those are $120 ticket.
$120,
right?
That's correct.
And a majority of that money stays here in Toledo.
Under our new contract, which we negotiated at the end of 2011, beginning of 2012, the city of Toledo it's about 75%. They get $90.25 of every ticket. Stays right here, that goes into the general fund.
So the Senate comes back in the fall, if that's when it happens, and they decide to go with the House and get rid of these. What then?
Well, if they make the cameras illegal, I guess we shut the program down, and then we're back to where we were before.
Have those discussions happened yet? As far as I'm not saying that it's going to happen. I'm just saying what if conversation, has that happened?
Not a lot yet, but we are going to start preparing for it.
Yeah. And obviously they will be taken down physically around the city, or will it be just a wait and see if it gets a green light down the road?
I really couldn't answer that at this point. I mean, if it becomes illegal to operate photo enforcement in the city of Toledo, the equipment does belong to the vendor, which is Redflex of Arizona, and it's my understanding that they would remove the equipment.
Final word, give it to you, and just all in all, you, the TPD, see this program, the city of Toledo, Patrick Hickey with Washington Local Schools, you see these things doing the job you wanted them to.
Yes, that's correct. We've had very positive results. Again, it's a force multiplier. And we are also, if I could add this,
Sure.
along with the other participating cities in the state of Ohio, that at least the cities that use Redflex Corporation, we put together and proposed some best practices standards, some language to go into the bill that we would support. Some of those things would be that mandatory signage at the entrance to every city, signage at every location that has a photo enforcement camera. If you're starting a new program, that you have to publicize it, a 30-day waiting period, a minimum speed that could be enforced. A mandatory that a police officer would review every one of the citations before it would be sent out, or that a citation would not be valid unless it was reviewed by a police officer. These are things that we all do, and it would give the state oversight, and that's what we would like to see. It would prevent some of these programs that have been in question, that have sort of popped up and you know, put a bad feeling in everyone as the way the tickets were issued. And this would give the state some control and some oversight, and that is supported across the board by every city that I know of, in the state of Ohio at least, that is running a photo enforcement program.
Lieutenant, thank you so much for spending some time with us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Stay right there. When we come back here on the Roundtable program, we're going to talk about some changes you're going to see on the roadways, especially the interstates here in Northwest Ohio, starting tomorrow. We'll be right back.